Hey everybody, John Peterson here, and today I want to talk a little bit about some advanced masking techniques in Adobe Lightroom. In the last couple of releases of Lightroom, they've made some amazing improvements to how the mask tool works. And you're able to really create some fine-tuned masks and select very specific parts of the image, whether that's color, area, or luminosity, and fine-tune these masks so you can make some really targeted adjustments in your image. And today I want to show you, this is just a quick tip with a couple of image examples. I want to show you a little bit about how I use a few of the more advanced techniques in Adobe Lightroom masking. Okay, here's one of the first images that I want to work on with you and show you the intersect feature in Adobe Lightroom masking. Now, intersect, what it really means is that when you intersect one or more masks, only those places where the mask overlaps will it be quote unquote masked off. So I can create multiple masks in different parts of the image, and only where they touch, where they overlap, is where I'm going to be able to make my edits. So in this particular image, notice that right here the sky's a little bit lighter, and also over here, this was shot with my drone, and sometimes I don't get even exposures across the sky. So for me, I would like to even this out and have a continuous blue sky in this shot. So one of the first things I'll do, because these are relatively on these diagonal lines, I think the best thing to do is to use a linear gradient. And so I'm going to start down here, and I want a large feather on this gradient. So I'm going to do that. Notice though that yes, my portion of the sky here is impacted and I will be able to mask it, which is great. But the problem is that the rest of this landscape is also affected by it. There's a couple more complex ways that I could get rid of that, but the easiest way to do that is to intersect this mask with a sky mask. Let me show you what I mean. So with this linear gradient, I want to intersect this mask with select sky. And now you can see, so the computer figured out the whole sky, and it had the linear gradient, and only those places where they overlapped is going to be masked. So now I can adjust my exposure down a little bit, I can adjust the blue down a little bit, and try to create a seamlessly blue sky across the image. Now, to do that again on the other side of the image, same thing, but it's at a slightly different angle. Again, I want to create a relatively large feather with this. Go just a little bit further, and then I want to intersect this with select sky. And again, it's just this corner over here that needs adjusting. So let me drop the exposure a little bit, and then let me drop the color temp just a little bit, and bam, look at that. And if you don't like it, if you can see a little bit of the gradient, like I can see just a smidge right here. I'm not sure if you can see that on YouTube. You can go back in and adjust this mask. So let's say I want to stretch this out even further. And now I don't see that line of where the feather stopped and the sky started. That's a great way to do this. Now in this next image, let's say that I just wanted to brighten the white foam in the foreground. I could go in with a brush and brush all these things, or let's try a quick way of doing something here. Let's just try a linear gradient, and I'm going to do this. And in this case, I only want to brighten the whites. So I want to go in to my linear gradient and say intersect with luminance range. And I'm going to go in and select something that I hope is going to be almost pure white. Wow, look at that. I think it did a really good job. And if I wanted to refine this mask, I could just isolate more of the range to the highlights. So let's go ahead and accept this, and I'll crank the whites, I'll crank the exposure a little bit, and I really make these foam bubbles pop. But there's a downside to this too. Notice that I also selected this area out here. So if you look at you can see if I toggle it on and off, that bright reflection has also been selected. So what I might want to do is subtract. And I'm going to use a brush, and I'm just going to paint over here and see if I can darken this a little bit. Much better. You see? So that's intersection, where two masks intersect to create a third selection. You know, and subtraction is something that I use a lot in Adobe masking. And so in an image like this that I shot up in Iceland, let's say I just really wanted to darken the upper half of the image. Of course, the sky, which is blown out, the water, and then a large part of the sand. So a traditional way to do that is to grab a linear gradient and let's drag it down to just where I want all the affection to happen. But notice though that this iceberg really comes into play, which is a bummer. So what I would probably do is do a subtraction again. I'm sorry, I'll hit that button, do a subtraction. By a brush, let's try that. I'm gonna bump up my flow 100%. And I can just paint out the mask that I don't want affected. Then I can go through and adjust the exposure. I can adjust the highlights. I can knock the whole upper part of this image down without impacting the iceberg. You know, there's another way to do this as well, where if I come back in here and I add a linear gradient, let's do this, and I want to subtract the subject. Boom, look at that. Instantly done. And then I can go through and adjust my exposure and adjust my highlights. Very, very easy to do this kind of stuff. There are so many permutations and combinations of intersections, additions, subtractions, that this masking tool is probably the most powerful feature in Adobe Lightroom. You know, and lastly, here's another example. Let's say I wanted to brighten up this hillside over here. Let me get back to square one. You see this this hillside is really dark. This was shot in Iceland. Believe it or not, this was mid-afternoon and the sun was just above the horizon. But let me start just with a linear gradient. You know, and I want to do this. I want to select the majority of the cliffside with most of the gradient. But I don't want the sky affected. So I want to subtract sky. Boom. And then likewise, I don't want to have the waves affected all that much. So what I might do is again do another subtraction of a luminance range. Let me go ahead and select that. And maybe I just do this up just a little bit more. I think I've got everything safely protected. And now I can adjust my shadows. And the waves are unaffected and the sky is unaffected. All right, there you go. There's some quick masking tips in Adobe Lightroom. So I hope you like what you saw. I hope you learned something new. I really encourage you to go out and explore using this tool in as many different ways as possible. You never know what you might be able to come up with, but addition, subtraction, and intersection are the keys to really powerful masking in Lightroom. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more great stuff. And hey, if you liked this, please feel free to subscribe, tickle the bell, do all that kind of good stuff. Every subscription helps. And thanks for watching. Have a great day, folks. Bye-bye.